Hey guys, welcome back. Salvage Yard Stories. Well, today I'm going to talk about. I had some friends of mine ask me, when you're a mechanic, do you ever end up working on other people's cars? And the short answer is yes. They asked me about when I thought that started, and I can say that this is something that most mechanics deal with, and that is everybody that you meet has an issue that they'd like to, talk to you about. I would say about 2006, maybe 2007, a couple of friends and I were driving in my car to Kansas City, which is about a 45-minute drive. We were going to go see a movie that we'd all wanted to see for a really long time. Well, while we were driving down there, we were maybe 20 minutes into the trip, my sister calls and says that her 97 Cavalier wouldn't start. Now, this car had problems on and off, but at that time, she worked in Kansas City doing hospice care. My sister had done this kind of stuff for her whole life, and she still does. She started out as a child welfare enforcer, then started working with hospice care, and now works at the Veterans Hospital. So I knew how important it was for her to get her car running because she had to drive the 40 minutes to work in Kansas City. But because I wanted to see the movie, I pulled one of those numbers that you shouldn't, where I was telling her, oh, it might be this sensor or this sensor or this sensor. So maybe 5 minutes after that, we're driving, and my friends look at me, and they knew what I was thinking. They're like, just turn around, it's okay. So we do a U-E, go back down the highway. I end up back at my sister's house, and luckily for me, my buddy could drive a stick, so he took my car, took my other friends home, and went, and I asked him to pick me up a set of spark plugs, and put those spark plugs in my sister's car, and sure enough, it started up. Two things happened that day. One was I figured out how nice it was to alleviate stress from other people. People who have no idea what's wrong with their car or how to fix it, and they have to either go to work or maybe they have to go on a date, but they can't get their car running. And the other one is, being able to help that person. It ends up making me feel good, but it helps them immensely. So shortly after that, my sister and my brother-in-law were getting ready to go on a vacation. And she calls me up and tells me that the battery light was on in her car, the car they were taking. And I said, well, you need to go to the auto parts place and find out if it's your battery or your alternator. Well, it turned out it was her alternator. And it was about 9 o'clock at night. They had one on the shelf because it was just an old Chevy. And I went to her house, started putting it in, and then the rain came, and let me tell you, it was pouring on top of me. I was in the driveway working, and because I was working in the driveway, I'd already taken the alternator off, so there were no belts on the car, not really going to move it into the garage. I finished that, and I saw the relief on my sister's face and my brother-in-law's face. And some people that work on cars who end up working on their friends' cars get irritated and pissed off. Sometimes, I'll be honest, it is irritating. But sometimes when you have somebody that is really up creek and they don't know what to do, it feels really good to be able to help them out. Well, I would say living here in Iowa, I've had those situations many times. My friend Joe, I've talked about him before in his little Honda Civic. They were out at, I believe it's Camp Dodge. Everybody had gone home. He was in the military, and this was a military installation. It was about 14 degrees, and his little Honda wouldn't start. My friends were there working on it, and it's one of those moments where people aren't listening to you, and nobody was listening to what I had to say. So I just sat there and waited and waited and waited, and finally they asked me, we took off the plenum, and using some starter fluid, I got the car to turn over enough to get the car to pump fuel into the motor. Sure enough, there was his car. Well, if his friends hadn't shown up who knew how to do something, he would have gotten a ride home and his car would have sat in an empty parking lot in the wind because nobody was there. Everybody had already gone home. I've done these things for my father-in-law, my fiance's kids, my nephews. One of my nephews, in fact, a couple years ago, right before COVID, ended up in the high school parking lot in Lansing, Kansas, with a Mitsubishi, and it was a Galant, a 4-door. Well, he was on the ice and he slid into a fire hydrant and it took out the front of the car. So they call me up and they're a little worried because they get a quote for taking the car to a body shop. And of course, it's way more than the car is worth. So what I did is I went to Kansas City, which was a 4-hour drive. I ended up with my friend Brandy at the wrecking yard. I found a fender, and I found a grill, and I found a hood, and I found a bumper cover. Managed to come back and put that car together. Now, they don't know how to do those things. And I think in every group, whether it's your family or your friends, everybody has something that they're good at. And I personally believe you should try to share those gifts with other people. And like I said, some mechanics don't like working on other people's things. I do. And, there are moments in my life where I'm trying to work on my television, or my father-in-law and mother-in-law have problems with their televisions, and I have my friend Matt. He's like a little whiz. He goes in there and fixes the things in my father-in-law's house that I have no idea what to do. All I know is yellow hole, blue hole, green hole, red hole. I have no idea how to hook this stuff up. And in fact, the guy behind the camera, my friend Michael, who does some of the shooting for me, he builds computers for me because he knows how to do that stuff. We all have gifts. Well, it's funny that I talk about my friend Matt, because when I talk about working on people's stuff and, the stories that I like to tell, about how I tell you that people are what make these stories fun, not just cars. It was a warm day, if I can remember correctly, and I was working in my garage. And the apartment complex here, we'd rented an apartment to my friend Matt. Matt's from the east side of Des Moines, but he recently lived in Knoxville, but he worked in Pella, so he got an apartment that was closer. Well, Matt had a 93 or a 94 Blazer. It was pretty awesome. Red. It had the sport package with the running boards and the aluminum wheels and the digital gauge cluster. Like it was pretty sweet. But at that time, it wasn't as sweet as he wanted it to be because it was overheating. Well, I had never even spoken to this person. I walked over to Matt and said, "Hey, what's wrong with your truck?" He's like, "It's overheating and it won't keep water." So I said, "Well, you're gonna have to carry some water with you." And it's funny. I told him, just like I tell everybody, I should probably say please, but I don't. I just go in my drawers. They're labeled. Give me a screwdriver and a set of pliers. And we ended up getting the thermostat out, and that saved him until I could, in a couple of months, put a water pump in his car. Matt and I have been thick as thieves ever since that happened, and that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't willing to give somebody a hand, fixing their vehicle. Now, that doesn't mean that every job I do takes 5 minutes. Some jobs take an extremely long amount of time, like my mother-in-law's Oldsmobile Aurora. Those do start to irritate me after a while, but I would have to say, when people ask me, do you work on your friends and family's cars? Most mechanics will say yes, because it comes with the territory. But I enjoy it. Most mechanics don't, but I enjoy it. I enjoy helping my friends out, and I enjoy making things easier for them. Because there's nothing worse than having a buddy who has to go to work on Monday morning, and on Sunday he comes in and his freaking wheels are falling off. Talking about my friend Matt again, had a wheel bearing. He was pulling in the parking lot. The thing was going to fall off like a wagon wheel. We ended up getting that one fixed too. But when you have a friend that's stressed out because they can't get something done, you feel bad for them. And if you can make it a little easier, you can. Most people would probably say that anymore, I would rather work on a car than drive a car, which is strange. Most car people who have a project car love to drive. But I love to work on cars, and it brings people together because, again, my friend Matt will tell you how many times have we worked on somebody else's car in this parking lot, and he's been a part of that too. I think that I end up bringing people that I meet, and I work on their vehicles to help them out. Most people are pretty good people, and they'll come in and they'll help you out. They'll help you work on somebody else's car because you've helped them with their car. And you meet people that way. It's not the Chevy Blazer that's important. It's not the Chevy Cavalier that's important. It's not the Volvo 240 or we spent a lot of time on that Volvo 240, and I'm pretty clear that my friend Matt would appreciate not doing that again. But all those cars don't matter. It's the people who own the cars, and that's part of being a mechanic, or at least it's part of being a mechanic for me. Well, I hope this clears up the whole, the old adage that if you work on cars, sooner or later you're going to work on everybody's car. Again, people don't like it. A lot of mechanics don't, but I enjoy it because it helps you to meet other people. Well, as you can see, I'm just sitting here in my shop right now, and I'm probably going to end up working on one of my cars. My friend Matt's actually back behind us by the garage door, and I'm pretty sure he's thinking that he's not going to work on one of my cars right now. But thanks for tuning in. I'm Uncle Dave.